Hi everyone, it is 2:10 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, November 10th, officially now November 10th. The BYU and Utah game just finished. What a crazy ending to that. And a crazy ending to an entire day of ups and downs across the board in college football. We have so much to cover. Let's jump right on in and see where we think the selection committee is going to be ranking the top 25 teams going into Tuesday's rankings for week 12. Here we go. Okay, we are on www.rankingsrightnow.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. We're going to be diving into all of the deep analysis that we can really cover. Starting with up top, Georgia loses to Ole Miss. Now, Georgia just didn't look like they had it today. Ole Miss was really in control the entire game. Carson Beck did not seem to really have it. I don't know what we learned more about. Did we learn more about Georgia or did we learn more about Ole Miss? Ole Miss has had a couple of up and down moments throughout the year, but the last couple of moments have been big ups, right? So we have Ole Miss jumping up from 16 to 9 in the next rankings. What I'm very curious about right here is this 9, 10, 11. Ole Miss just beat Georgia, so you would think logically that Ole Miss would be ranked ahead of Georgia. But Notre Dame beating a disgraceful FSU team this year compared to last year. I mean, they beat them by 50, I want to say. Yeah, Notre Dame won 52-3. What did we learn about that? Well, everyone's killing Florida State. So I don't know if a 50-point win against Florida State, which sounds crazy, will even get them to move up in the rankings at all. So if I had a gut feeling, I might put Notre Dame ahead of Ole Miss right here, but the algorithm has Ole Miss with a more impressive top 3 win ahead of number 10 Notre Dame. So I think these two could flip, but Georgia at 11 makes a little bit of sense. Why does it make a little bit of sense? Because now we need to look at the number 4 team, Miami, who lost today against Georgia Tech, who's had good games throughout the year. They're not on an amazing roll this year, but they've had really good games. Their losses are against high quality teams. Miami loses at Georgia Tech. They've been playing with fire the entire year. It finally caught up to them. Both the 3 and the 4 ranked teams moved down 8 spots in their rankings. Now, Boise State, SMU, and Texas A&M. Boise State and SMU both won their games today. Texas A&M had a bye week. Just for breathing air and doing nothing wrong, winning your game, they're predicted to all move down a spot in the rankings because we have to make room for Ole Miss. I think most people would say that a 16 ranked Ole Miss beating a number 3 ranked Georgia should now be in the top 10. That makes sense. When you do that now, you now need to create room for this 13 through 15, which used to be 12 through 14, to make that room, because you can't have it's rankings. You have to move somebody down. So according to this logic, Boise State, SMU, Texas A&M all dropping in the rankings. Ole Miss cracking into the top 10. They might be 10 or 9, I think one of the two. Georgia and Miami at 11 and 12. Alabama's win over LSU, according to the algorithm, moves them up to number 6 in the rankings, behind Tennessee. That is significant because do you put a 2-loss Alabama ahead of a no-loss Indiana, who didn't do much against Michigan today? A 5-point win at home against Michigan. Michigan is a historically great team, but not this year in particular. So they've been crushing teams all year. This was the first time that they actually had to grind one out a little bit, and it got a little bit sketchy at the end. Do you put Alabama ahead of them? Do you put Alabama ahead of a unbeaten BYU team? Man, we're going to be talking about that game for a long time, especially going into these rankings. That holding call when they essentially had the ball turned over against, when Utah was turning the ball over against BYU, and the refs call a holding call. BYU ends up storming down the field, kicks a field goal to win it at the very end. Man, let's just play around with the what if simulation tool real quick. So if we go to the what if simulation tool and say that the game would have ended on that sack, right? BYU does not move down the field. They do not kick the 3 points, right? Let's go over to the what if simulation tool. Let's change this back to 19, right? My keyboard needs to wake up a little bit. 19 to 21. Here we go. If that would have happened, we're going to go ahead and run the what if simulation. We now see that BYU would have dropped all the way to 16, right next to CU and Kansas State, their other Big 12 counterparts, right? It would now become a slugfest between those three teams to try and grab that last Big 12 conference championship, because you're essentially guaranteed a top 4 seed in the playoff if you can grab that championship. So now you have CU, BYU, and Kansas State all fighting against each other to try and grab that spot, right? Iowa State is gone. They lost today. They've now lost 2 in a row. They're essentially out of the top 25 according to the algorithm, right? So you have CU, BYU, and Kansas State if BYU loses that game to Utah. But here we are, right back to BYU hanging in there. They grinded it out. They looked really bad in terms of their offense timing-wise. A lot of unnecessary timeouts, a lot of close to delay of games. Just a tough road win in a tough environment in a in a rivalry game. So all those things come into context, right? So does Alabama shoot up to maybe number 8 and 7 becomes, and Indiana moves up to 6 and BYU moves up to 7? I could see that. That doesn't seem unrealistic to me. I still think that Alabama would be above Ole Miss. Penn State moving up to 4, I think that's going to upset a lot of people. A lot of people that I saw on social media really responded not happy that Penn State's going to be ranked a top 4 team in these circumstances. But according to historical polls, that's where they're going to end up. Tennessee at number 5. A couple of other interesting things. You have James Madison and Louisiana cracking into the top 25. Army up 7 was very surprising to me. I don't know what the algorithm loved about their game against North Texas. North Texas has a good team, but a 14-3 win really surprised me that the algorithm was so up on Army. I think Army will still be below Clemson and Wazoo. Missouri had the wackiest game against Oklahoma you had ever seen. If you go look at the highlights of like the last 3 minutes of that game, there was like 4 touchdowns. 2 scored by Mizzou, 2 scored by Oklahoma. Both had a scoop and scores at the very end. A really, really crazy game. I'd be surprised if they move up 3. They might stay at 24, maybe up to 23. So Louisville might move up 1 in that scenario. But Pittsburgh lost again. Let's just talk about Pitt and Iowa State real quick. If I can find them, either one. Iowa State lost to Kansas. Kansas was supposed to be good. They were in the preseason top 25. Kansas has done nothing the entire year. Iowa State just came out completely flat against KU. KU was bombs away from the start of this game. So KU with a really nice win. Pittsburgh loses to Virginia at home after Pitt needed that win against SMU last week. So now they're back-to-back losses. Iowa State is back-to-back losses. That was, both those teams had everything in front of them. Both were ranked, I think, in the top, maybe Pitt was like 16 or 17, but close. Both of them were close to being in the top 15 going into this weekend. They both blow their chance. Clemson looked a little bit scary at top, but ended up closing it out. just so much. Oregon looked good against Maryland. Ohio State 45-0 against Purdue. Like it was nothing. They're just tearing one sheet of paper. I am very curious going into the rankings, right? And by the way, the rankings all week or all day today were fantastic. Especially if you follow rankings right now on social media or you're refreshing your page, you could see the back and forth with BYU. You can see the back and forth with Miami and Miami dropping and Georgia dropping and Alabama shooting way up the more they were growing that lead against LSU. Jalen Milroe just destroyed them on the ground. Right? You can see as the games are progressing, not just if they're going to win, but how much, how many points are they scoring, how many points are they giving up. All of these different things are changing these rankings. But if I had to guess on maybe where the algorithm might have been a little bit too aggressive, Alabama is something that I'm paying attention to. Ole Miss and Notre Dame are something that I'm paying attention to. LSU drops all the way down to 24. I buy it. I mean, I would be surprised if they dropped out of the top 25. That seems a little extreme because Alabama's still a great team, but they're going to be somewhere in that 20s range. Georgia, Miami at 11 and 12. I don't think they're going to be much higher than that. Georgia has 2 losses. This is Miami's first loss, but Miami hasn't really had the toughest schedule ever, and they've played some really close games down to the wire. Everything else kind of seems realistic to me. Kind of seems like it's in the ballpark. Army up 7 is another one that I'm curious about. So a couple spots that I'm definitely curious about on where they land. Let's just go ahead and look at the top, the next couple of teams that are just outside of the top 25. You have Tulane. A lot of people are saying that Tulane should be ranked. Being at 26, you might as well be 25 or 24 in my opinion. UNLV, South Carolina, another one being at 28. If you're 25, that's not a bad prediction according to this algorithm. That makes sense to me. Navy's still in there. Memphis still in there. ASU had a rough last couple of weeks. They're still in the ballpark. Wow. What a great day. It was so much fun. This app has made my viewing of Saturdays so much better for college football. And I know I'm biased because I designed the thing, but the reason I designed it was to enhance the college football experience for all fans. And I really think as the day goes on and as you see things start to unfold and you can start to play these games in your head of where everything's going to line up, it brings out so many more conversations. It's so much more interesting. It's so much more fun. So thank you all for paying attention to rankings right now. Go ahead and create a free login. You can go ahead and play around with the What If simulation tool. You can play in the College Rankem weekly challenge that we do. Subscribe to our newsletter for free. Follow us on social media. It has been a blast. We will check back in on the newsletter to see where everything unfolds when we get the new releasings Tuesday night. We'll then have the next projections going into week 12 and what we can expect, what's projected, some more great games that are slated. This has been fun. Thank you so much. And go to sleep. It's been a late night, but fun. Have a great one. Thank you everyone for paying attention.